You weren't supposed to find this, but you're ready now. That sentence sits like a small, warm stone in your palm, unexpected, heavy with meaning, carrying the heat of something both private and public. You read it and feel a tremor, not the thin excitement of novelty, but the steady recognition that a door has already been opened inside you. You did not stumble into awakening by accident. Something in you shifted ahead of a larger turning. The timing is not a mistake. The timing is preparation. Right now, the map you carry is mostly made of sensations rather than facts. You know things by the way your chest relaxes, by how your attention lingers longer on certain people, by an inexplicable sense that some things no longer fit. By frequency, I mean the quality of your attention, the habitual tone of your choices, the way you resonate with life, what you feel, what you tend to choose, and what you naturally attract. This is not metaphysical jargon to be feared. Think of it as a personal tuning. You have moved from one station into another, and that movement shifts how the world answers you. At the beginning, it felt like collapse. It often does. There was a season where the ground you trusted gave way. Your relationships loosened their grip. Routines that once felt safe lost their color, and the beliefs you carried like a map began to show holes. You may have told yourself you were falling apart. In truth, you were being refined. The falling away was staged, not to punish you, but to prevent overload, to take things down in measurable segments so your system could integrate the new sensitivity without shattering. Remember the first night you woke in the dark and could not place why the room felt unfamiliar? You sat up, alert, with a knot of restlessness in your stomach, and every familiar object seemed to whisper its small, irrelevant history. Or the morning when a friendship that had been a compass for years slid sideways, not with accusation, but with a slow, polite distance, as if it were following rules you no longer shared. Or the moment a job you once defined yourself by lost its magnetic pull and suddenly felt like someone else's life. These are not random losses, they are calibrations. The universe, call it field, life, the collective, is removing props that obstruct your new posture. This dismantling comes in waves. There is the first, raw wave, shock, grief, bewilderment. You feel untethered. Then comes a quieter wave, seeing what doesn't serve, feeling relief even while you grieve. Later, acceptance converts to curiosity. What wants to come next? Each small rupture is intentional accommodation. It is as if the system takes out one shaky rung at a time so the next ladder can be erected in its place without you having to leap. You may have tried to explain it in language that fits the old map, anxiety, burnout, midlife crisis, because those words are handy and recognizable.
But language is partial. Words point at experience and sometimes miss the shape. Let yourself hold both. The clinical labels that get you care if you need it, and this softer story that says something about timing and preparation. Honor the pain. It is real. Name it. And also allow this. Your discomfort is doing essential work. 3 small signs of that work show up again and again among those who woke early. They are simple, ordinary, and verifiable. First, drift in relationships. Not drama or betrayal, but a quiet loosening. Conversations grow thinner or longer and less surface level. People who were once central become optional. You find yourself choosing solitude not as avoidance but as a practice, to listen. That drift does not always look like loss from the outside. Often it looks like clarity. You stop scheduling things that drain you and start preserving the small window of silence where your own intuition speaks. Second, environments feel heavy or misaligned. You walk into rooms and they press against you. Offices, friendships, even neighborhoods that were once background noise now seem to require more energy to inhabit. You notice physical fatigue in places where your attention is taxed. This is the field at work. The energetic mismatch signals it's time to move or change the engagement. Rather than blame the people or the situations, see these sensations as signposts. They tell you where your inner frequency meets external resistance. Third, core beliefs crack. Principles you held as bedrock begin to show seams. Sometimes faiths, political certainties, or life plans that used to be non-negotiable feel brittle. You might feel guilty for questioning what used to be unquestionable, or afraid of appearing unsteady. That fear is reasonable, but underneath it is a deeper intelligence pruning assumptions that will no longer support your next level of perception. You were not premature. You were prepared. Say those words to yourself gently when the grief is loud. They are not a dismissal of pain, they are a frame. Preparation is ugly and exquisite at once. The soot of what's burned smells like loss, but ash is where new soil begins. There is a paradox in early awakening worth holding. The very fragility you experience is combined with a kind of emergent resilience. As your old identity unravels, your sensitivity becomes more precise. You begin to feel things in a layered way. There is the surface of emotion, and beneath it a ripple of meaning. Where once you reacted, now you discern. You feel subtly before you think. You notice a tension in the air, and only afterward find the plausible cause. Your inner antenna, a word that often feels woo-woo, sharpens. Think of it like an instrument, coarse before, now finely tuned. This does not make you brittle, it makes you selective. If you can, pause for a breath now.
Quiet the phone, close your eyes for 10 seconds, and name one change you've noticed in the last year. No judgment, no explanation. Hold that name for a moment, as if it were a small book you weren't meant to find. If this feels right, keep it private. This is not about proof, it is about recognition. You were not supposed to find this in everyone else's timeline, but you were ready to find it in yourself. After that pause, come back to the way awareness shifts. Synchronicity becomes a language, not a spectacle. You begin to notice patterns, not the flashy neon sign kind, but the subtle alignment of threads. A book opens to the exact paragraph you needed. An offhand comment by a stranger gives you a puzzle piece. A job posting appears the same week you decide to honor a quiet preference. These moments are confirmations, not guarantees. They say the inner movement is being translated into outer arrangement. There's a practical way to recognize this translation. Watch for 3 small but repeated things: consistent nudges, efficient doors, and mirror people. Consistent nudges are the little gentle prompts you get that keep returning. Maybe it's a curiosity you can't drop. You think about painting, gardening, a subject you'd never study, and then every week something related appears in your feed, in a conversation, in a dream. Not coincidence, but alignment. These nudges ask for attention, not obedience. You may choose to act, or you may not. Both choices teach you something. Efficient doors are openings that require less force than before. Where you used to have to push, pull, beg, or explain, now a possibility shows up that feels like a hinge turning by itself. It might be a new collaborator who sees you without proving anything, or an opportunity that arrives timed to your capacity. Don't rush to claim all doors. Some are for practice, others for home. Your discernment will improve. Mirror people are those whose presence reflects your condition. They don't mirror you in mimicry, they reflect the state you carry. When you are calm, a mirror person's agitation may soften. When you are unsettled, their tone amplifies what you already suspect. This is not your responsibility to fix. It is information. Notice how people respond to you and learn to read the field without personalizing every reaction. As your sensitivity sharpens, your life simplifies not because of discipline alone, but because unnecessary friction drops away. You find yourself saying no more often, not as a snub, but as a boundary that preserves coherence. You stop rearranging your schedule to fit every invitation, and notice which small adjustments create disproportionate relief. That relief is not privilege, it is calibration. As you refine, you become less entangled in drama and more present to subtler currents. This selectivity sometimes looks like withdrawal to those who aren't tuned to the quiet work. Friends might ask if you've changed, as if you should apologize.
You don't. Instead, you practice explaining that you're learning a new way to answer life, with less reflex, more intention. You are learning etiquette for being more sensitive, how much of other people's energy to hold, when to step in, and when to let things breathe. It is a skill, not a moral superiority. Around this time, the world notices in its own way. External life begins to reflect the inner shift. Opportunities come that match your new bandwidth. People arrive who resonate with the clearer tone you carry. Old ties loosen without drama. This is synchronization. It is not a cosmic favor or reward. It is consequence. You moved your inner compass, and the environment gradually refracted to that setting. You might see it in small, testable ways. The project you felt lukewarm about dissolves, freeing time for a different endeavor that suddenly appears. A neighbor offers help at the exact moment you need it. A relationship enters a new phase without the exhausting negotiations of the past, because you both begin to act from different priorities. Be wary of the temptation to equate these alignments with destiny. they are invitations. They are possibilities unfolding in resonance with your choices. The presence of synchronicity is not a destiny stamp. It is an intelligence in the field saying, here are openings that match your current pitch. You still choose. You still practice discretion. One of the more disorienting consequences of early awakening is the sense of being unanswered by those you most hoped would understand. People you love may not see what you now can feel. That's often the most painful part, the isolation that comes from outpacing familiar frameworks. Yet this is also a sign. You are carving a path that does not rely on universal agreement. The role you inhabit is relational and solitary in equal measure. You are preparing to be steady in the quiet, even when the chorus around you continues its old song. You are not waking early to lead in the conventional sense. Leadership here is not a platform, but a posture. Imagine a lighthouse. It does not move the ships. It simply keeps its light steady. Ships make their own choices. Your light assists navigation without commandeering other vessels. That is your role as stabilizer. Its power is not coercive, it is present. You will notice moments when your mere presence modifies the energy of a room. Perhaps someone mid-rant short-circuits when you enter and finds themselves quieter than before. Perhaps conflict dissolves simply because you are not taking sides. This is not occult manipulation. It is coherence. As you ground, others find it easier to land. People unconsciously attune to whatever tone is most available. If you inhabit steadiness often enough, steadiness becomes an option for them. This is why inner work matters more than public explanation. You do not have to convince anyone of your readiness.
Readiness expresses itself quietly, in decisions that feel inevitable, in patience that is not agitated, in the capacity to witness without reactivity. The activation of your role is less like a visible coronation and more like a slow internal alignment, where you no longer need to prove your steadiness to be it. Integration follows dismantling in unpredictable rhythms. At first, integration is patchwork. You put together the scattered pieces of self like quilts from old clothes. Later, it becomes coherence. The parts begin to speak to one another. Triggers, those quick buttons that used to send you into a story, lose their charge. Where once you would be hijacked by a phrase or a look, you now have a pause. The pause is the new muscle. It's the space you cultivate between stimulus and automatic story. In that space, you can choose response instead of reaction. That muscle grows through small, ordinary practices, noticing breath, naming sensation without immediate narrative, choosing presence over explanation. These practices are not mystical shortcuts. They are ways to let integration happen in everyday life. The more you practice, the more often your inner compass recalibrates without drama. Yet integration is not a destination you reach and then rest upon. It is a landscape that deepens. There will be regressions and flashbacks to old patterns that feel like sabotage. This is not failure. It's part of recalibration. Each time you feel pulled back into old stories and manage to step out, you reclaim a fraction of your coherence. This is how the nervous system learns new settings, through repetition and tender correction. If you pay attention, you will notice a change in the logic of your choices. Earlier choices were defensive, optimized for safety, secure status, avoid shame. Now choices are oriented by a different economy: integrity, alignment, resonance. The cost-benefit calculations shift. You begin to say yes to what supports your inner pitch and no to what erodes it. The evidence you require to commit becomes more about feeling than about external approval. As these choices accumulate, an internal knowing begins to emerge. It is not flashy. You might mistook it earlier for arrogance or delusion, but now it is quieter and truer. It shows up as a calm conviction in small matters, the right word at the right time, a decision made without second-guessing, a boundary kept gently and firmly. This knowing is activation in nascent form. It will not announce itself like a trumpet. It will anchor you. But before that anchor can be trusted publicly, the field tests you. Tests are not punitive. They are clarifying. You may be put in situations that require you to practice neutrality under pressure. You might find your patience strained, your limits prodded. Notice what surfaces in those moments. Patterns will show up: old shame, impatience, the urge to correct others. These are not failure. They are where you still need tenderness and practice.
At a certain point, the external field intensifies in ways that feel like magnification. What was manageable becomes magnified, the collective shifts, and your calibration matters more. You are asked, in increasingly subtle ways, to be steadier, not because you are superior, but because you were early. Your steadiness becomes a resource. The pressure is real. It is easy to confuse service with martyrdom. Keep the boundary clear. Being a stabilizer is not about absorbing harm or silencing legitimate anger. It is about maintaining coherence without sacrificing clarity. Here is a practical check you can do when you feel tested. Locate one small center in your body, chest, belly, hands, and return attention there for 30 seconds. Name 3 facts about the present moment, a sound, a color, a breath, and then proceed. This simple recentering is a way to translate inner readiness into embodied act. It trains the muscle you need when the collective noise rises. Remember also that you are part of a loose, unseen network. You are not alone in being early. Across cities, disciplines, and ordinary lives, others are experiencing similar refining processes. You may never meet most of them, but their existence matters because resonance does not require proximity. Think of these peers as an ambient hum, not a hierarchy, not a movement with leaders and followers, but a web of similar frequencies that stabilizes the field in diffuse ways. When you align, you add a thread to that web. As your field stabilizes, you will find people beginning to reflect back different versions of you. Some will be mirror people who soften at your presence. Others will test you, intentionally or not, because their systems require friction to change. Both reactions matter. Do not personalize either. Learn to encounter testing as raw data. What are my limits? Where is generosity possible? Where do I need distance? This stance keeps compassion honest and sustainable. You may notice a subtle shift in how decision-making feels. Early choices were often defense-driven. Now choices are increasingly about integrity and alignment with a quieter core. Where before you might have spent weeks rationalizing decisions, you now arrive at them with arrested clarity. This does not mean the decisions are easy. They are often the opposite, because integrity asks you to leave comfortable things that do not fit. Yet this clarity often brings an unexpected repose. You stop arguing with yourself. At times you will encounter skeptics who insist your experience must be explained away. Let them. There is a kind of humility in not defending every interior shift. Your readiness is not contingent on universal validation. It is internal, practical, and relational. It shows in what you do more than in what you say. There is a moment not yet far ahead where integration will meet activation.
Activation is not a fanfare. It is the moment when your stance matters in a way that ripples outward. It tends to arrive quietly. An opportunity presents itself where your steadiness allows something uncomfortable elsewhere to land. A conversation you hold clearly allows a truth to be spoken without fallout. A small decision you make without drama changes the field for others. Before activation becomes practical, you will likely face a trial of alignment, situations that ask if you will maintain coherence under real pressure. These are built to reveal, not to collapse. They are where readiness is confirmed by simple fidelity, showing up for small things with the larger posture intact. Hold this for the next part. You will meet a situation that amplifies the very skills you have been refining. It will not be dramatic in a cinematic sense. It will be ordinary and relentless in its demand for steadiness. How you respond will not alter cosmic plans. It will quietly affect people who stand beside you, whose capacity to hold complexity depends on seeing someone else do it first. You have been prepared not to save the world, but to keep a light steady while it recalibrates. You are not a shepherd of souls. You are an antenna and an anchor for a world in motion. As you walk into the next chapter, carry a simple practical tool. When you feel flooded, locate your center. Name 3 facts of the present. Breathe, and choose action from that space. This is not magical. It is methodical. It trains the nervous system to trust the new pitch. And so, as the field begins to shift more visibly around you, as patterns that were once subtle become louder, as people and opportunities rearrange, remember the small private truth you held in the pause earlier. Keep that book in your hand. Its pages are the practice you have gathered so far. The next moments will ask for refinement and steadiness. You are not heading into them alone, even when it feels like you are. You are threaded into a broader net of early awakenings, and the readiness you have cultivated will do its work quietly, reliably, and without need for applause. There is a threshold ahead where your personal frequency will meet a broader turbulence. It will ask whether your composure will hold when the collective field fluctuates. You might feel anticipation, a tremor of anxiety, or a surprising excitement. All of these are legitimate. Prepare not by collecting proof or making declarations, but by continuing the small practices that root you, noticing breath, choosing presence, letting old structures fall away without chasing them, and honoring the mirror people who reflect your state without making it yours. Right now, the world is arranging itself around the fact that you woke earlier than most. The edges are not sharp yet, but they will be.
Your task is practical and simple. Sustain coherence, practice gentle discernment, and be willing to let certain things go so that what belongs to you in this next phase can take shape. You won't be called to perform grand acts. You will be called to show up steadily when small moments demand consistency. What comes next will reveal itself in ordinary ways. A conversation will require a steadier presence. An opportunity will arrive that fits your new bandwidth. A relationship will ask for your attention in a manner that tests the muscles you have been building. These will be the scenes where your preparedness is lived rather than pronounced. And just before that scene unfolds, listen for a quiet activation inside, a small internal confirmation that your posture is aligned, a sense that the inner and outer are matching pace. When that occurs, you know the work has been integrated enough that your presence will influence without coercion. You will not be asked to save or lead in the old sense, but to anchor. There is more to say about how synchronization deepens, how the field responds to collective shifts, and how activation expresses in concrete choices. There are stories to tell of ordinary people who, by maintaining a steady light, allowed neighborhoods, teams, and families to find better rhythm. There are practical rituals and symbolic seals people use, optional, private acts that help consolidate readiness, but those belong just beyond this moment, where the first test begins to show itself. You meet the test not with drama, but with a string of ordinary scenes that make one demand. Can you keep the quieter center when noise rises? Maybe it starts with a meeting that used to leave you bruised, voices overlapping, personalities sharpening, and this time you notice the temperature change before it becomes a story. Your heart tightens, you feel the old reflex to defend or to prove. Instead of diving, you bring your attention inward and name the sensation. That tiny act, naming without narrating, changes the chemistry of the moment. You do not need to correct anyone or collapse into explanation. You simply hold steadiness, and because you do, the room finds a different rhythm. The resolution is small, no one applauds. Yet someone later thanks you for listening, for not inflaming, for being a place where the argument could soften. Or perhaps the trial arrives as family pressure. An elder tells you how things have always been done. A cousin nudges at choices you have already let go of. You are tempted to explain your path as if the explanation would create permission. Instead, you show what change looks like by your manner. Calm eyes, concise words, and the willingness to step away without apology. In that withdrawal, you do a different kind of work. You permit your relatives to remain in their map while you remain in yours.
This is the steadying no one asked for, and everyone notices in their own way. Another test. An opportunity appears that looks like momentum, but also smells faintly of old compromises. The pattern is familiar. An offer that asks you to be busier in the old way, or to fold your integrity into someone else's timetable. Before you accept, you feel the alignment check in your body, a slight dullness around the sternum, a constriction in the throat. You have learned to read those signals. You decline, not out of fear, but out of fidelity. The choice is lonely for a moment, but later unfolds into better openings that match the pitch you are practicing. Each refusal polishes the lens through which the field can now perceive you. These ordinary trials are the field's method of verifying readiness. They are not final exams designed to humiliate. They are rehearsals that reveal where your nervous system still seeks the old safety. When you meet them with patience and curiosity, you convert every small failure into data and every successful steadiness into a lived credential. This is how activation is quietly certified, by repeated fidelity in low-stakes moments, so that when the stakes rise, the muscle has been rehearsed. Now picture how synchronization deepens beyond single events into persistent shifts. At first there were flukes, one-off alignments that felt like luck. Over time, these patterns gather into habit. The kinds of coincidences you notice begin to repeat in themes. Creative invitations find you, places of work that honor depth appear, friendships arrive that ask for presence rather than performance. These are not random perks. They are a mutual, unspoken agreement between you and the field. You are choosing a pitch. The environment is adjusting to resonate. Take the example of a person you may know in passing, someone who left a successful corporate track because the job no longer matched their inner tone. For months, they felt the grief of abandoning identity. Then, quietly, a neighbor mentioned a small nonprofit looking for organizational help, and that nonprofit's mission synced with the person's deeper values. The fit required fewer adjustments than expected, and asked for the soft skills that had been cultivated through the inner work: listening, patient leadership, boundary setting. The transition felt like arriving, not rescuing. That is synchronization. It looks mundane and deliberate. As these patterns accumulate, your outer life becomes less an argument and more a mirror. The world refracts back what you hold. The steadier you are, the steadier the invitations. This is not a reward system, it is physics of resonance. Like tuning forks, systems vibrate together when they share a pitch. You do not exert control in this process, you simply allow your own tone to be audible. There is a subtle but important etiquette to living inside this resonance. First, stay humble about cause and effect.
You may notice positive changes and feel tempted to attribute them to some exclusive insight. Resist that impulse. Gratitude, curiosity, and restraint keep your field porous and kind. Second, do not mistake alignment for proof that every closed door was a failing. Sometimes refusals are redirection. Third, keep practicing small, embodied recalibrations. They are the practical infrastructure that keeps resonance sustainable. Integration, the slow bringing together of old and new, also changes how you tell your story. Where you once rehearsed narratives to justify choices, you now notice how stories tighten and become truer. The pressure to perform explanations diminishes. You reveal what you need through action more than through monologue. This is important because your presence will be most influential not through persuasion but through demonstration. People respond to coherence in others the way breath calms a small crowd. Contagion without dogma. There will still be moments when you are tested by fire. Someone may misinterpret your steadiness as indifference. A partner might accuse you of withdrawing. A community might expect you to absorb its anxiety. These are the parts of early awakening that touch tenderly on old wounds: abandonment, shame, fear of not belonging. Meet these moments with radical gentleness towards yourself. Name what lit up inside you and then let the name fall away. Offer clarity without hostility. You will be tempted to fix, to compile arguments, or to collect validations. Instead, practice being clear and present. It is deeper work. Let's pause on a practical technique you can use whenever the field feels loud: the three-point return. Find a small point of evidence, sight, sound, touch, that is not an interpretation. For example, the color of the coffee mug, the hum of the refrigerator, the texture of your chair. Anchor to those points for a moment. Then locate a bodily center, fist to belly, hand to chest, fingertips pressed together, and keep the attention there while you name one intention. The intention need not be grand. It can be, "I choose calm here," or "I will speak clearly." That short sequence is a bridge from reactivity to steadiness. Use it when your system tightens. It trains coherence. You will meet mirror people who change depending on the tone you hold. Some of them will be soft, and your calm will be balm. Others will be volatile, and your steadiness will feel like a foreign language they resist. Neither reaction is a verdict. They are feedback. Use it to refine your boundaries and your compassion. Know your limits. Gentle presence is powerful, but it is not an instrument to be used for unending absorption. You are responsible for holding your field as well as lending it steadiness. There is a particular bait to watch for: performance of service. The world can mistake steadiness for availability or moral capital. People will ask more of you because you give less energy to spectacle.
Remember that service in this context is an exercise of discernment. Ask, is this request aligned with my integrity? Does fulfilling it sustain my center or erode it? Sometimes the kindest response is to refuse with clarity so that what you can offer remains alive and whole. As integration grows, you begin to notice a different logic to your obligations. You stop measuring choices by external metrics and start measuring by resonance. This recalibration affects money, time, relationships, and vocation. It is normal to encounter grief here: loss of identity, of expected progress, of old comforts. Grief is not a sign of error. Treat it as a companion. Let it mourn what must go, so new things can arrive. Ritual of release can help. Write a brief note to the part of life you are leaving, and burn, bury, or safely discard it. Make the act private if you prefer. This is symbolic work that helps the nervous system permit change. Symbolic does not mean trivial, it means meaningful. Activation, when it arrives, is deceptively quiet. It is not a dramatic thunderclap, but a series of small confirmations. You will not suddenly be handed a banner. Rather, you will notice that the steadiness you once practiced becomes a resource for people in ways you could not have anticipated. A colleague uses your patient framing to de-escalate conflict. A friend speaks an overdue truth because you have created space in which honesty lands without explosion. A neighbor asks for help because you are the person who listens without needing to fix. These are activation moments. They are manifestations of readiness lived in the ordinary. Think of activation as a rerouting of responsibility. Previously, the inner work may have felt like a private burden. Activation asks you to hold that work as public resource without asking you to adopt external titles, platforms, or heroism. It is the opposite of spectacle. Your role remains that of an anchor. The art is to allow your steadiness to serve while maintaining boundaries that protect your center. There is a danger, subtle and seductive, the allure of becoming indispensable. The field will sometimes reward your availability with trust, which can warp into dependency. Keep an eye on patterns that ask you to be the only source of calm. If people consistently come to you rather than develop their own skills, slow down and invite them to practice steadiness for themselves. Teach by modeling, not by taking ownership. This helps the whole system mature. You asked earlier for concrete rituals that feel like sealing. Here is an optional, symbolic practice you can adapt and use privately. These are not commands. Treat them as invitations you may accept in whole, in part, or not at all. Find a quiet corner. Place your hand on your heart. Breathe in a way that feels natural. Then allow the exhale to be full and unhurried.
Think of the phrase that best fits the truth you hold. It might be simple. Perhaps, I was awakened early to steady the field. If that phrasing feels too bold, adapt it. I am learning to be present, or I practice steadiness for those around me. Once you have a phrase, speak it aloud or write it down. If you choose to speak, do so with a tone that feels like a promise to yourself, not a proclamation to others. If you write, fold the paper and keep it somewhere private, a journal, a drawer, a box of small things. If you prefer, make a small gesture to seal it. Touch the paper with your forehead, press your palm to it, or simply tuck it away. The gesture is a marker, an anchoring of intention into everyday life. If words fail, use movement. Stand with feet grounded. Inhale, raise your hands as if opening to the sky. Then draw them down over your body as if gathering a light into your center. This physicalization helps the nervous system accept the intention. Repeat as feels natural. Again, optional, symbolic, yours. After the seal, live the phrase. Read it once in the morning if it helps. Refer back to it when choices appear. Let it be less a mantra for others and more a contract with yourself about how you will carry the work. You may wonder about community, about whether you should make your activation public or keep it private. There is no single correct answer. For many, the safer path is to remain quietly available, visible enough that your steadiness can be perceived, but discreet enough that you do not become a fixture of other people's dependency. If you choose to share your story, do it with humility and with an eye toward offering practical tools rather than seeking validation. Share examples, not identities. Give processes, not prescriptions. This preserves the relational integrity of your role. A final caution about language. When you describe your experience, aim for clarity that invites rather than excludes. Replace jargon with specific images. Instead of saying, "My frequency rose," you might say, "My attention shifted, and my choices began to reflect different priorities." That kind of translation creates bridges for people who have not yet learned the metaphors you use. As you move forward, practice a small liturgy for the moments when you feel the collective noise becoming loud. Breathe into your center. Name a fact of the present, and choose one small action that honors your pitch. Keep this liturgy simple so it can be repeated in supermarkets, in meetings, and in the kitchen late at night. Repetition is what converts intention into habit. Activation will also bring moments of quiet surprise. People you did not expect to listen will show up differently when you are steady. Sometimes a partner softens. Sometimes a child calms. Sometimes a neighbor opens a door. These are not signs of power over others. They are evidence of relational resonance.
It is generous to be the vessel of such influence and wise to steward it responsibly. Remember the particular humility the field asks. Your readiness is not moral superiority. Your early awakening is not a merit badge. It is a placement. You are positioned in a system that asks you to be steady, not to judge. When you hold that posture, you allow complexity to be seen and processed rather than simplified into black and white narratives. That capacity is rare and necessary, and it will be recognized in ways that are practical, modest, and profoundly human.
Now, before you close this moment with a symbolic step, consider one last practice that integrates both community and privacy. If you want a communal act, you may choose to write a short line as a personal seal, and then, if you feel moved, share that line in a place where others gather, an online group you trust, a private message to someone who understands your path, or a physical journal left at a community altar. The line need only be brief. It is a marker of alignment, not a public performance. If you prefer privacy, tuck the line into a journal and read it when your center feels frayed. Both choices honor the same thing: your readiness. Here are a few sample phrases you might adapt. Choose the one that feels closest to what you actually mean, or write your own in your own voice. I woke before the turning because I was needed awake. I am learning to steady myself so others can find calm. I am aligned enough to choose with clarity. Say it, write it, or keep it private. Let the phrasing be a polite witness to the truth you carry. As you step back into your day, carry this reassurance like a small stone in your pocket. You were not meant to find this before you were ready. You were meant to find it because you were ready. That is the quiet revelation that underlies the title. You weren't supposed to find this, but you're ready now. Let that sentence be less a destination and more a practice. Repeat it when uncertainty rises. Let it temper the bitterness of loss and enlarge the tenderness of grief. Let it be a steadying cord you return to when choices pile and old maps feel insufficient. You have been prepared by a process that is precise and unglamorous. You have been refined by small ruptures and patient integration. You have practiced steadiness in low-stakes ways so that when larger demands arrive, you will remember how to anchor without absorbing. You are part of an unseen net of people doing the same work. No hierarchy, no messianic expectation, only the simple, stubborn act of holding clarity and presence. In time, you will know the activation as a pattern more than as a single event. You will find yourself choosing in accordance with this new pitch, and your choices will gather others into possibility. That is your role, not to command, but to be the place where navigation becomes possible. If you feel called to seal this moment, speak or write one short line now. Make it private if you prefer. Make it public if you sense safety and service in sharing. Whatever you choose, let your act be an alignment tool for you alone, not a demand, not a show, simply a personal agreement. You weren't supposed to find this by accident. You found it because the timing of your life was deliberate. The readiness inside you is a quiet gift and a practical resource. Walk gently with it. Keep practicing the small skills that make steadiness possible. Trust that your presence matters, precisely because it is steady, modest, and available. You are not premature. You are prepared. You are ready now.